The movie begins with an old woman living with her sick husband, who is in very bad condition. She has to take care of him all by herself. One day, while working in her room, she hears a strange noise coming from her husband's room. When she checks on him, she suddenly hears the eerie sound of a wolf howling from outside, which scares her a lot. The scene shifts to show the wolves on her farm also getting frightened by something and running around, making a lot of noise. This disturbance is caused by a drowning evil spirit that has entered the farm. As the old woman is working in the kitchen, a chair behind her mysteriously moves on its own. This scares her, and she realizes the spirit is close. The next day, her two children, Louis and Michael, come home to visit their parents. From the way they talk to their mother, it's clear that the relationship between the siblings and their mother isn't great. There's a lot of tension and misunderstanding. The old woman tells them to leave the house, but doesn't mention the evil spirit that has been haunting it for years. That night, Louis and Michael sit outside talking. They both realize how tired they are and how busy they've been with their own lives, neglecting their parents. They regret not paying attention to the love and care their parents needed. Later, when Louis closes the door to go inside, the door mysteriously opens on its own, which freaks her out. Just like when you close your fridge and then realize you left the milk out, the door had a mind of its own. At dinner, their mother warns Michael, saying, "There is nothing good in this house. There's a lot of bad energy here. So you two should leave." But Michael doesn't take her seriously and heads to his room. After dinner, while the old woman is back in the kitchen, the same chair moves again, and this time, it brings her to tears. She's exhausted and holding a knife, clearly overwhelmed by the situation. The next morning, Louis and Michael find their mother has taken her own life. They are devastated and heartbroken. They remove her body, and the police come to take it away. Both siblings fall into deep shock, sitting silently by their father's side, unable to process the tragic event. Their neighbor, who is also saddened by the old woman's painful death, visits them. Soon after, a nurse arrives to take care of their father. She mentions to Louis and Michael that their mother used to talk to herself, as if she was having conversations with someone who wasn't there. This makes Louis reflect deeply. He realizes how tough things must have been for their parents and regrets leaving them alone when they needed their love and support the most. Just like when you finally check your mailbox after weeks and see all those bills piled up. You regret ignoring them, but it's too late. Because of the guilt she felt, Louis took on the responsibility of caring for her father. She went to her mother's room, where her mother used to sew, and discovered a half-finished wedding gown that her mother had been making. This made Louis even sadder. One day, while Louis was taking a bath, she suddenly heard footsteps in the bathroom. Thinking it was Michael, she called out, "Michael, are you there?" But there was no response. When she pulled back the shower curtain, she was shocked to find her father standing there, looking very strange. He was shaking and trembling, which terrified Louis. She screamed, closed her eyes in fear, and when Michael rushed in to check, no one was there. When they went to check their father's room, he was sleeping peacefully, just as he had been before. Louis was confused. She had clearly seen something but decided to ignore it, trying to stay calm. Before Michael went out to get some supplies, he checked on their dad and found their mom's diary hidden under the bed. He showed it to Louis, and the two of them started reading it. In the diary, their mom had written about the evil spirit that was haunting the house, slowly draining the life from their father. She had even written that she needed help to stop it. This brought Louis to tears. They started piecing together the strange things that had been happening around the house and the eerie things written in the diary. Neither of them could figure out why their mom had taken her own life so suddenly. Desperate for answers, they kept reading. Their mother had written that she could hear the spirit's voice and feel its presence in the house. The two of them decided to visit the doctor who had been examining their mother's body. The doctor handed them a cross, saying, "I found this in your mother's pocket." Both Louis and Michael found this very strange because their mother had never been religious, just like finding broccoli in a kid's pocket. You know something weird is going on. When they returned home, their anxiety grew. One night, while Louis was taking care of their father, he began coughing, and to her horror, a spider crawled out of his mouth. Louis tried to catch it, but Michael came in and asked if everything was all right. Louis, still shaken, just said, "Yes, everything's fine." Later, when Michael went to his room to sleep, the light suddenly turned on by itself. He got up to check, and to his shock, he saw his mother floating in the air, smiling at him. Then the lights went off, and her voice filled the room. Michael was terrified. When he looked again, his mother wasn't there, but he had the unsettling feeling that she had been hanging in the air, as if suspended. He quickly turned the lights back on, but there was no one there. Then, something scratched his face, leaving a mark. Meanwhile, Lewis, now more disturbed than ever, went to check on her dad. She found lipstick smeared on her father's mouth, even though no one had been there to apply it. This discovery left her feeling even more unsettled. Just like when you find crumbs in your bed, but don't remember eating in there. Something doesn't add up. Meanwhile, someone called the house, and Lewis picked up the phone. To her surprise, she heard a recording of her mother's voice. This freaked her out, and when Michael came back, the man outside, however, already seemed to know about Lewis and Michael. He told them that their mother used to visit him, which is how he knew who they were. He gave them his number and told them to contact him if they ever needed help. Michael, feeling uneasy, suspected something was off and told the man to leave. Afterward, Michael called his wife and kids, expressing how much he missed them and wanted to be with them. Meanwhile, Lewis continued reading her mom's diary when she suddenly heard the sound of glass breaking. She assumed Michael might have accidentally broken something, but then she noticed a dark, evil shadow. That's when Lewis began to realize that everything her mom had written in the diary might be true. Michael told Lewis about the night he saw their mom floating in the air. Both of them began piecing things together and realizing that something was definitely wrong. They went outside and saw their dad wandering around the yard, his eyes looking strange and eerie. They realized the spirit could take any form, and their father might not even be who he appeared to be. Then their neighbor called to offer help, but as soon as he did, he was attacked by the spirit. The spirit came to the neighbor in the form of Lewis and started cutting itself with a knife, marking its body and face. The neighbor quickly figured out that this wasn't the real Lewis, but before he could act, the spirit whispered something in his ear. In the next moment, the neighbor was forced to take his own life. Just like when you're forced to eat your veggies because mom is watching, but this was much worse. It became clear that the spirit had the power to hypnotize people into ending their own lives, just like it had done to their mother and now to their neighbor. The next morning, Lewis and Michael went outside to check for any footprints that might prove their dad had really been wandering around the night before. But they didn't find anything. This made them question everything even more, and they both agreed it was time to send their dad to the hospital. Lewis decided to call the man who claimed to know their mother. When she called, the man was confused and asked, "Where did you get my number from?" Lewis explained that he had visited their house, given them the number, and told them he knew their mother. The man's response shocked her. He said, "I've never met your mother and I live in a different country. I don't know any of you, but I had a daughter named Lewis who took her own life. Coincidentally, her voice sounded a lot like yours." Hearing this, Lewis was terrified. Her head began spinning, and she quickly hung up the phone. Just like when you realize you've been talking to a telemarketer for 10 minutes, and all you want to do is end the call as fast as possible. Lewis and Michael deciding to consult a doctor about sending their father to the hospital. The doctor, after examining their father, says he is too weak to endure the journey and might not survive the trip. The best option is to keep him at home, as the stress could take his life. Their father's nurse adds that what their father really needs is love and care, expressing that their mother had suffered without them being around. This made Lewis and Michael realize how much their absence had affected their parents. Later, when Lewis and Michael went to the farm, they were shocked to find many dead animals lying around, torn apart and eaten. It was clear that no ordinary wolf could have caused such destruction. The siblings started suspecting the evil spirit's involvement. They decided to light a large fire and burn all the dead animals. Michael, feeling emotional after everything happening, especially about his father and sister, decided he didn't want to leave them and would stay with the family. He even told Lewis that he was getting scared of everything going on. A little while later, Michael heard a voice coming from the farm. When he went to check, he saw the evil spirit in the form of their mother. The spirit whispered something in Michael's ear, just as it had done with their neighbor and mother, and Michael found himself almost ready to end his own life with a knife, just like when you're trying to resist a midnight snack. But this was much darker. But using all his strength, he managed to stop himself. One night, Lewis had a terrible nightmare while sleeping beside her father. She felt the evil spirit's presence around her, which scared her. When she woke up, she found her father stuck to the ceiling. But then she realized it was just another bad dream, and she woke up screaming. When morning came, Michael was nowhere to be found. Lewis searched for him everywhere, only to realize that he had run away from them, afraid for his own life. This broke Lewis's heart, and she felt abandoned. Then, the neighbor's granddaughter came to visit Lewis, telling her strange things about her father's condition. Lewis quickly understood that this wasn't really the neighbor's granddaughter. It was the spirit in disguise, trying to mess with her. Just like when someone says, "I'll only take one fry," and then eats half your meal. Ignoring the spirit, Lewis tried calling Michael. Meanwhile, their father's nurse arrived, and she and Lewis got into an argument. Suddenly, the nurse started stabbing herself in the cheek with a sharp object, shocking Lewis. When Lewis tried to stop her, the nurse knocked her unconscious and then brutally ended her life by stabbing her nose and body with various weapons. Back with Michael, he had reached his wife and children, only to find them all dead. Overcome with grief, Michael cut his own throat, but just as he was dying, he saw that his family was actually alive. He realized too late that this had been another trick by the spirit to claim his life. While Lewis was with her father, he began coughing violently. At the same time, she heard Michael's voice coming from the house. Her father's condition worsened, and Lewis became extremely nervous. She tried to save him, but her father died after a fit of coughing. Heartbroken, Lewis began crying, but then she heard her mother's voice. When she turned to look, the spirit emerged from her father and attacked Lewis, ending her life too. In the end, the entire family had been consumed by death. The reason behind it all? Their mother had made a deal with the devil, promising to hand over all their souls in exchange for completing her work. The evil spirit had stayed inside their father, dwelling in the house, and ultimately destroyed the entire family, along with anyone else who came into contact with it. And with that, the chilling story comes to an end, just like when your favorite TV show ends on a cliffhanger. But here, the cliff was death itself.